But did you know? You should know this because you were a history teacher once, weren't you?
Mm.
Quite a while ago, but you were a history teacher.
Not quite this long ago. But
no, because we're talking 550 years ago now, because it's the 550th anniversary of the bloodiest battle ever fought on not just Yorkshire soil, but English soil. 28,000 men were killed at Towton, near Tadcaster.
Now, the clash marked a turning point in the War of the Roses, and now archaeologists are hoping to uncover new evidence about the battle by carrying out a dig at the site later this year. Danny Carpenter has this.
In these fields of developing crops once stood the flower of English manhood. On one ridge, Lancastrians, on the other, Yorkists. In the middle, carnage. Bloodshed on an unprecedented, almost unimaginable scale.
Well, there's a line of artefacts, including over 350 arrowheads just behind me here, and right across the middle of the battlefield. And that's obviously where the initial arrow engagement began. And then also there are an awful lot of artefacts that we've recovered from this area that have been ripped off clothing during hand-to-hand combat.
The weather was appalling, freezing, slippery underfoot and a blizzard in the air. The battle turned with the wind. The Lancastrians had snow in their eyes, the Yorkist bowmen a breeze at their backs. Then the Duke of Norfolk arrived with fresh troops. The Lancastrians broke and ran. The fleeing Lancastrians coming down the hillside had to cross this small stream to get away, but it was in flood, and between the blizzard and the water, they died in such numbers that eventually their bodies formed a bridge that their fellow soldiers could walk and stumble across. The chroniclers of the time say 28,000 men died that day. It's probably an exaggeration, but it was very many. Their bodies were later stripped of anything of value and piled into mass graves, which will be excavated later this year. Archaeologically valuable, but most of the bones have already gone, reburied in consecrated ground, an act of medieval guilt.
They were basically cleansing themselves of the battle, and of course this was Richard III, it was Edward IV's brother, and so they were cleansing the Yorkists about what they'd done on this battlefield.
In the little church, which still stands on the edge of the battle, someone has placed lighted candles, and there are fresh flowers on the memorial. 550 years on, people still care. It matters. Danny Carpenter, BBC Look North, Towton.
It does matter. Let's talk to author George Goodwin, whose book about Towton, called Fatal Colours, is published today to coincide with the anniversary. So let's get this straight. The Yorkies gave the Lancastrians a good hiding.
Well, not Yorkies, because I'm afraid that the Yorkists were mainly from the south
yes,
and Wales, whereas the Lancastrians, dare I say it, the Lancastrians were the true northerners in this particular battle.
Oh, no. We're not having a historian coming in with the facts, ruining all our myths. Before we go any further, we won. We won that battle, but of course lost the war.
Well...
You mean we won the war?
Well, in a sense, you say we won, that the Yorkists won, and the extraordinary thing, of course, was that in the end, the Yorkists became the Northerners under Richard III. So effectively, the North lost twice when it came to the Wars of the Roses.
Oh, it's getting worse, Harry.
Let's talk about the battle itself. I mean, they do say that the blood ran through all the water and it was a terrifying ordeal. How do we know it was like that?
Because of the original sources, letters were going to the courts of Europe immediately after the battle. A letter from the victor, who was the Yorkist king, 18-year-old King Edward IV, to his mother, was written one day after the battle. And, as I say, to the courts of Europe, and they were consistent. They all said that 28,000 were killed.
I think what's incredible, George, is that was 1% of the total population were on that battlefield on the outskirts of Tadcaster.
It was an absolutely exceptional event. I mean, history studied at school, so much is on Nazi Germany and Russia. And in Nazi Germany, they study about total war. This was total war. This was on English soil.
There should be some kind of centre there, shouldn't there, to commemorate this battle?
Well, there will be. The key thing is to actually build on the work that the Towton Battlefield Society has done now over a number of years. And there are plans for a major visitor centre.
George, I'm sorry, I don't mean to smile, but it is 550 years ago. Some might say perhaps we're not rushing to commemorate it with
Well, the reason for that, of course, is that there were buckets and buckets of Tudor whitewash to try and remove the importance of the battle. They were usurpers themselves, so they weren't at all keen on usurpers at previous battles, as Edward IV and the Yorkists had been. So they buried the battle. They didn't want anybody to know about it, and Shakespeare was their master propagandist.
Thank you.
OK, you've set the record straight. We lost twice.
I'm afraid so.